You can also see my. Okay, great. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome to our next session of the Essentials Concept Clarity series. So far, we've had classes on general psychology, statistics, biopsychology, but today's class is on a very interesting topic, which is lifespan psychology. And lifespan is a unit that is asked in almost all of the entrances, whether you're preparing for any master's entrance or CUET PG or UGC NET or MCLIN Sci, which was previously known as MPhil. This is something which is asked in all of those entrances. And the topic for today is also very special. It is on Erickson, and I'm sure you must have studied about Erickson in your school. That is something that they teach in class 11, class 12. You again do it in bachelor's. But when you're preparing for Erickson in terms of the entrance exams, there is so much more that needs to be done. So in today's session, there will be a lot of new terms that you will not really find in your textbooks, terms that must not have been taught to you in the college classrooms itself. That's why we have tried to incorporate them in the PPT for you to understand them better. And like every session, we'll also be sharing a lot of mnemonics so that you can remember the stages better. We'll be linking it with a lot of personal life examples so that you do not have to rote learn anything and you can link it with your own daily life also. That's the whole purpose of Essential series, which is concept clarity. And by the end, we'll also solve some MCQs together, and you can also ask your doubts if you have any to really test your understanding. Yes. So the resource person that will be taking your session for today is Miss Himanshi, and she has recently completed her clinical psychology degree in MPhil from IPAS, and she had secured an All India rank of 2. She is a great resource person. Before inviting her to this platform to take a session for you, Manvi and I had personally had a very long discussion with her. We had sat and taken multiple demo sessions with her because we only want to bring in the best resource persons for you. So she does a great job at teaching. Lifespan psychology is one of her niche areas. She holds a lot of subject knowledge expertise there. So yes, we are glad to have you, Himanshi. Would you like to um, unmute yourself and introduce yourself as you begin the class?
Hi everybody. Am I audible, visible to everybody? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. Thank you, Vidhi, for such a lovely introduction. And once again, hi, I'm Himanshi. I've just completed my MPhil from IBHAS. I've been on the other side of this platform quite recently, and I know how hectic it does get. So I hope ki, this session contributes to your knowledge in some way and it is easy to grasp. And please feel free to stop me at any point when you feel something is confusing or something is not very clear, and I'll be happy to help. Just before we move forward, I would like to confirm, is everybody comfortable with both Hindi and English? I tend to switch between the two while teaching, so I'm hoping that it works for you guys. Or is there a preference? Okay, perfect. Okay. And another question, are you, most of you guys, are you in your masters right now or your bachelors, so that I know what depth I have to, stick to? Masters, bachelors. Okay, so I think a lot of you are in your bachelors right now, or seems like a roughly similar division. All right, perfect. ठीक है. I do understand that there's a difference in our experience and your experience of this whole MPhil debacle, because सब कुछ ही change होता जा रहा है with RCI changing rules every fortnight. So I do understand कि उसकी वजह से अभी masters और graduation वाला बहुत different होगा. I will try to accommodate everybody, and like I said, अगर कुछ भी लगता है जहाँ पे you are not able to understand, or if you need some clarification, please feel free to stop me. I will start with the presentation now, okay? Just a second. Okay. Is it visible to everybody? ठीक है. Okay. So before we move forward, since the topic is developmental psychology, and at least सबने bachelor's तो complete करी ही है, so I'm assuming कि you are a little familiar with everything, right? So why don't we start with what are the main areas जिसमें mostly developmental psychology का focus होता है? What three types of development are you familiar with जिसमें mostly theories भी होती हैं जिसपे and जिसपे developmental psychology focus करती है? Can you moral, right? Social, cognitive, yeah, mostly right. Cognitive, language, moral, biological, exactly. Exactly. Perfect. So yes, exactly. Mostly it is biological, then cognitive. उसी में relatively close to that is language as well, and then moral development. Most of the theories जो developmental psychology में जिन पे हम बात करते हैं are around these 3 or 4 niche areas, right? अब इन्हीं में से एक है जिसपे हम आज थोड़ा सा और इन डेप्थ बात करेंगे, बट बिफोर वी गेट इनटू इट, here is the definition. So developmental psychology studies systematic changes in thinking, feeling and behavior. Thinking, feeling and behavior, कुछ भी किसी भी साइकोलॉजी की फील्ड की अगर डेफिनेशन के बारे में हम बात कर रहे हैं तो उसमें एबीसी आएगा ही आएगा. दैट इज आर अफेक्ट, आर बिहेवियर एंड आर कॉग्निशन. अगर थिंकिंग, फीलिंग एंड बिहेवियर याद नहीं होता है तो एबीसी की तरह याद कर सकते हो. ऑल दो यू आर इन ग्रेजुएशन, सो आई एम अज्यूमिंग कि इतना याद हो ही जाता है. फ्रॉम कंसेप्शन टू डेथ, एंड ऑफ कोर्स how biological and environmental factors interact to produce these changes. ठीक है. सो थ्रू आउट डेवलपमेंटल साइकोलॉजी हम ये बात कर रहे हैं कि कैसे कैसे द मोमेंट स्पर्म एंड ओवम मीट, वहां से लेके टिल आर डेथ, लाइफ स्पैन पर्सपेक्टिव, क्या क्या चेंजेस होते हैं उसमें, क्या क्या बायोलॉजिकली डिटरमाइंड होते हैं और क्या क्या नर्चर की वजह से या इन्वायरमेंट एंड सोशो कल्चरल एस्पेक्ट्स की वजह से चेंजेस आ रहे हैं. ओके. अब इसमें मोस्टली पर्सपेक्टिव्स को हम दो पॉइंट ऑफ व्यूज में हमने बांट रखा है. फर्स्ट इज कॉन्टिन्यूस डेवलपमेंट एंड सेकेंड इज डिसकॉन्टिन्यूस डेवलपमेंट. So continuous development, how I like to understand it is, you can view it as a series of numbers, okay? Just say 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. And discontinuous, you can understand it as ABCD. I will explain what I'm trying to say. So continuous development is gradual, cumulative and quantitative changes जिसमें underlying processes हमेशा same होंगे. It is assumed that whatever is present in a old person or an adult, so to say, is also present in an infant. ठीक है. जैसे कि mostly information processing approaches take a continuous development का perspective. So what happens is, let's take one cognitive process. We can take maybe attention, memory, whatever you want to choose. Okay. So if we look at attention, attention is also present in infant and it is also present in an adult. Okay. What changes is just the quantity, not the quality. Attention attention ही रहेगा, पर वो थोड़ा सा बड़े होके ज्यादा हो जाता है. एज एन इन्फेंट वो इजीली डिस्ट्रैक्टेबल होते हैं, इजीली इधर उधर ध्यान चला जाता है. adulthood में we know what to focus upon and what is important and what is not important. So what is happening, 1 2 3 4 वो लीनियर प्रोग्रेस कर रहा है. बस कि 0 था पहले एट 1 पॉइंट, जनरली होता नहीं है, बट हाँ 1 था, फिर 2 3 4 5 करके इवेंचुअली 10 तक जाएगा जहां पे भी जाएगा. So that is continuous development. Discontinuous development या फिर stage view talks more about qualitative shifts. So like I said, अगर हम उसको ABCD की तरह देखें तो पहले A था, उसके बाद B आ गया है, फिर C आ गया है. There is no linear progression. उसकी क्वालिटी ही चेंज हो गई है. A very very famous stage view is given by Jean Piaget. I think हम लोग सब उसके साथ फेमिलियर होंगे. तो अगर हम उसके पर्सपेक्टिव से बात करें, जैसे प्री ऑपरेशनल स्टेज में कॉन्क्रीटिज्म होता है, ईगोसेंट्रिसिटी होती है कि बच्चे के लिए पॉसिबल ही नहीं है किसी भी और का वर्ल्ड व्यू समझना, राइट? व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट ईगोसेंट्रिसिटी, they do not know what the other person is thinking. They only know my truth is the only truth. On the other hand, जैसे ही हम प्री ऑपरेशनल स्टेज से कॉन्क्रीट ऑपरेशनल स्टेज पे जाते हैं, जो ईगोसेंट्रिसिटी होती है वो चेंज हो जाती है. नाउ दे कैन टेक अदर पीपल्स पर्सपेक्टिव. नाउ दे नो कि अगर ग्लास में एक ग्लास से दूसरे पानी के एक ग्लास से हम लोग दूसरे ग्लास में पानी डाल रहे हैं, तो द क्वांटिटी स्टिल रिमेन्स द सेम. द concretism now changes. So what is changing? It's not the reasoning itself is changing. The way we are thinking, हम लोग symbolic thought से logical thought की तरफ जा रहे हैं. It is the type of thinking that is changing, the quality of thinking that is changing. It is not the quantity of thinking that is changing, right? So does it make sense? Are you clear about the continuous and discontinuous ka difference? And then we can move ahead. Can you give me a thumbs up or something, or do you have any doubts? Okay. Anybody else? Somebody has any doubts? Can you please? Oh, okay. I'm so sorry. I'll try to stick to English. Do you want me to repeat this, Sumitha? Okay, discontinuous development. I'll explain again. Mm, is IQ continuous? Yeah, it depends on which view you're looking at it from, but yes, IQ is continuous. We assume that the child is brought with some degree of intelligence. Okay, Bhavya wants me to repeat discontinuous development once again. So, for discontinuous development, like I was saying, uh, when we are talking about continuous, the quantity changes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Discontinuous mein, the quality itself changes, right? What changes is not the weight of the process. It's not ki I had a few number of or a few quantity of attention earlier, and now I have a lot of it. What is changing is how I am perceiving the world. So if we, again, I will try to quote using Jean Piaget. Centrism is a concretism, or centricity is a very popular concept, right? So Piaget explained that glass example about how a child in pre-operational stage, if we show them two glasses, one being a little broader and the other one being a little taller, and we move the glass from one glass and pour it to the other one, and we ask the child that did the quantity change, or did one glass have more quantity than the other one, they would say yes, right? Because to them, the height is the only part of this entire experiment that they're focusing upon, concretism. So this one, the one with that had broader width, was relatively low on height, and the other one is higher. So they would say that yes, the quantity has changed, the taller one has more quantity. But on the other hand, if we ask the same question to a child in concrete operational stage, they would be able to recognize that the quantity has not changed. So, what is changing between these two stages, between these two discontinuous stages, is not our thinking, not our quantity of thinking. It's not that I was not thinking about this earlier and I'm now thinking about it. What is changing is our quality of thinking. That earlier I was not able to think in a certain perspective. That ability in itself was not present for me. Now that ability is present for me. Now I can switch from symbolic thought to a little more rational, a little more logical. Now I know that if I'm pouring this water from this glass to the other one, then the quantity would essentially remain the same. So what is changing is the quality of thinking. Thinking is same, not the quantity, the quality. Does that explain it a little better, Bhavya? Is it better? Okay, perfect. Uh, Moving ahead, oh, actually, before moving ahead, I would like to, ask you all now, based on this definition, which one do you think is Erickson's developmental theory? Where does it fit? Continuous development or discontinuous development? Discontinuous. Discontinuous. Exactly, exactly. It's also right there in the name. It's a stage view, right? Everything that Erickson and Freud gave, it is a stage view. So it will always be discontinuous development. We are shifting the way we are thinking. Okay. Uh, Moving forward. There are three major approaches to development. These are actually three schools of thoughts that are present across all the psychological fields. So I will very, very quickly rush through them because I know that you are familiar with it. Okay. So psychoanalytic perspective talks about how our unconscious processes and our inner conflicts and our early experiences, all of these contribute to development. Okay. Now, before I move forward, I think आप लोगों ने वैसे, I know that most of you might have seen it, but would you want to differentiate between the names that Freud and Erikson gave? It is a very basic question. For the stages that they gave, Freud's stages are called X and Erikson's stages are called Y. What is the difference? Can you tell me? Psychosocial and psychosexual. Exactly. Right. So, psychosexual stages was given by Freud, and Erikson gave psychosocial stages. Erikson was very, very heavily influenced by Freud and just expanded his theory, kept the core concepts same, but expanded his theory and incorporated an entire lifespan perspective, taking into account how environmental factors and social and cultural factors, all of these aspects influence our development. Okay, so that is the psychoanalytic perspective on development. Then, of course, behaviorism is a very, very major field throughout psychology. Includes thinkers like Watson, Skinner, Bandura, and all of these people talking about how we learn through experience, how conditioning, classical conditioning, operant conditioning, reinforcement, environmental influences, all of these, what influence do they have from our childhood to our adulthood? How are they influencing our learning? What aspects are we learning? What aspects are we sort of ignoring? All of these are covered in behaviorism. And then, of course, cognitive developmental theory, Jean Piaget, a brilliant mind introduced very, very nice and new concepts in the field of developmental psychology. We might get into it in another class. Right now, I would like to move forward. Just, I don't think you would have any questions about this slide, but does anybody want to ask something, or is there anything that you want to talk about as of now? Okay, I'm assuming it's clear. Okay, so here onwards we delve into the actual topic for today, the psychoanalytic perspective and how Erikson and Freud were sort of working on it parallelly. Okay, so Freud, of course, gave the psychosexual stages, which start from oral, then anal, phallic, latency, and genital. According to Freud, our development stops at dash. What is the dash? Can you tell me? When does development stop according to Freud? Come on, it's also, I think it is mentioned in the slide, but if it's not, then this might be an easy one. Can somebody guess? Genital, okay. Hmm. Genital stage, I agree. It does stop at genital stage. What is the genital stage? Is it 5 years, 6 years, adolescence, adulthood? When does it stop, according to Freud? Adolescence, yes, Nishta, that is correct. Freud assumed that adolescence is the age where our development stops. Erikson, on the other hand, did not agree with him. He believed that development is lifelong and gave a lifespan perspective to development where it starts from infancy and goes on till old age. That is something that we will talk about throughout this class. And he gave a lot of new concepts, like I said, sticking to the psychoanalytic perspective, but also incorporating the environmental factors and other aspects of it. So let's dive right in. Erik Erikson. Okay. I believe that it makes sense for us to know a little about the person to make sense of their theory. It puts the whole thing in perspective and in context. So Erik Erikson was born in Germany and he never actually knew about his biological father. He was brought up by his stepfather. So this issue of not knowing who I am, not knowing if I actually belong, was a very inherent and personal issue for Erikson. The concept of identity did not just drop into his mind out of nowhere. It was his entire childhood where he struggled with this concept of identity, because he struggled with this, that do I belong in this family? Who am I apart from this family? So that entire aspect of not knowing his biological father continued to have influence throughout his life. Then he moved to Vienna and worked and trained under Anna Freud. So, like we know, Sigmund Freud mostly worked with adults. Anna Freud, on the other hand, enjoyed working with children. She loved child psychoanalysis, and she was very, very interested in understanding how children develop and what roles do the parents have in Anna Freud's life, in the child's life. Okay. So they were continuously interested in knowing that, and that is something that also reflects in Erikson's theory as well, where we keep on noticing influences of environment and influences of the socio-cultural aspect in the person. Mm. Eventually, he moved out of Germany because of the World War and went to United States. And again, he had to deal with that entire psychosocial adjustment aspect. He then again had to deal with identity formation and understanding how do I fit in this new culture? Who am I in this new area? Who am I over here? And that is something that again also is reflected in his theory. So the next 2 points, 1950 and 1968, very, very important. Yeah. This is when in 1950 he published his first book, Childhood and Society. This is when he introduced the 8 stages of psychosocial development. Please remember these 2 points, frequently asked in exam, especially NIMHANS and IBHAS exams. And then 1968, he published the second book, Identity, Youth and Crisis, where he talked extensively about identity crisis and gave the world a new term and a new way to look at the concept of identity, a new topic itself for developmental psychology to work upon. So these were his major 2 contributions, which revolutionized the field of developmental psychology. And like I said, frequently asked in exams, please do remember these 2 points. Okay, should we move forward? Are there any questions till now? Am I moving too fast? Please let me know. I will slow down a little. Okay, thank you here. Anybody else? No questions. Okay. Is this space comfortable for everybody? I hope there are no more language issues for anybody. Works? Okay. Okay, I'm assuming that there are no doubts. So, do we need to know? These are the major 2 ones that you need to remember. There's a third book that if you need, then it would be mentioned in my notes. But yeah, mostly these 2 are the ones that are frequently asked, nothing apart from that. Anybody else? Okay. Okay, then I'm moving forward. Right, theoretical foundations of Erikson's theory. The first and the most important concept that is very frequently missed in our graduation and master's classes is epigenetic principle. Okay, so this is a topic that, like I said, mostly missed and also a little difficult to understand. So I will try to make it simple as much as possible and hope you get it. So when Erikson talked about epigenetic principle, it is very different from genes or genetic aspects that we now understand, given the current, technology and science and advances and all of that. So what he wanted to talk about was that how development unfolds in a predetermined sequence. So each stage emerges at an appropriate time and builds upon the previous stages. let's put a pin in it for now and think about a house being constructed. Okay, so whenever we are, let's say you are constructing a house for yourself or you're observing somebody else, what goes first? First, we build the foundation, right? Then next comes walls, and then next comes the roof, and finally comes in painting and furniture and all of that. Okay, we cannot move in the opposite direction. It won't be that we start with furnishing and then lay the foundation. It cannot be that we first build the walls and then we lay the foundation. It always will have a predetermined sequence. That is what Erickson repeatedly emphasized. He states that every development, everybody going through development would have to go through a predetermined sequence of stages, starting with trust versus mistrust and autonomy versus shame and doubt, and so on. We know the stages, right? But this is where it gets interesting, that this predetermined sequence is then influenced by our biology as well as our environmental conditions. Now let's assume we are talking about let's say an infant is learning how to walk. Okay, so as I am hoping ki somebody in your house would have a child or an infant, or if even if you do not, you know that for a child to learn walk how to walk, they would first need to hold their balance while sitting. First need to learn how to sit without any support. Then when we learn how to sit without support, then comes the next step where we learn how to crawl. Then crawling, after that we come to walking with support, then walking without support, and so on, so on, right? So predetermined sequence. We cannot just one day wake up and decide that we're going to walk. Again, biologically predetermined. But this biological predisposition then is also influenced by environmental conditions. Now assume that this child is not getting any nutritional support from his parents, or every time that he tries to make a move, he is criticized by his elder sibling or by anybody around him. All of these factors, there are a lot of barriers, structural barriers in his environment that prevent him from learning to, let's say, take even a single step. So this is where the predetermined sequence also gets influenced by our environmental conditions. So epigenetic principle, according to Erickson, the key word is predetermined sequence and is influenced by both our environment as well as the biology. Makes sense, everybody? So far? Okay. Okay, perfect. Then the next foundation principle is once again a repetition. I won't spend much time, but psychosocial versus psychosexual development. Like I said, Erikson continuously drew upon Freud's theories, but also wanted to be a little different from his in his orientation while considering social, cultural, and historical influences, rather than just the biological drives or innate needs, as Freud put it. Okay. Then a second distinction between Freud and Erikson is how he viewed ego as being autonomous and a creative force. So if we remember Freud's ego, okay, we know that it is trying to strike a balance between two different opposing forces. What are these forces? Do you remember? I need to know that you are all over here. It's trying to balance two different forces within our unconscious mind, the ego, according to Freud. What are these two forces? Id and superego. Very good, very good. Yeah. So it is sort of at the disposal of id, right? It is trying to tame it with its defenses and with XYZ different things. But according to Erikson, ego is autonomous. It is in itself a creative force. It is not trying to just hold it accountable or just keep superego in check. It is making its own active decisions, and it is learning as we move through different stages. It is learning different virtues. It is learning different skill sets as we move through different stages, and we will learn about how it is doing that eventually. Okay. And then the third foundation of Erickson's theory, of course, is that he was the first, among the first ones to give a lifespan perspective, and as well as challenged the view that Freud had, that personality development is largely completed by adolescence, which was my question earlier as well. According to Freud, after adolescence, our development is complete. Erikson completely challenged that view and was strongly opposed to that. Okay, moving ahead. Quickly, do you have any doubts? Hmm. Here, do you want me to repeat lifespan perspective? Okay. So, lifespan perspective, according to Erikson, is basically that development starts from infancy and goes on till death. Freud viewed lifespan or identity formation or development in general to stop at adolescence. If you remember, in Freud's 5 stages, the genital stage stops at adolescence. Adolescence was the vague term he gave. He did not put a number exactly कि इस age पे खत्म होगा. But that is where it ends. Erickson's theory, on the other hand, goes on till old age, till geriatric age, and even further. Around 65 plus people are also incorporated. So it goes on till death. That is what the lifespan perspective talks about. He was one of the first ones to contribute to the lifespan perspective. That's it. Epigenetic principle in short. Okay. I'll try to repeat it once again very quickly because I'm worried we are running out of time as well. So, epigenetic principle, like I said, the focus is on predetermined sequence, that uh, every stage builds upon the previous stage. So, like we were talking about building a house, right? So, first we lay the foundation, then we build the walls, then we move on to the roof and so on. So after, like has been shown as well, we move from one step to the other. We cannot jump from this step to directly the rooftop, right? That is being predetermined. That is how we talk about a fixed sequence. Predetermined is basically fixed. So according to Erikson, every individual moves through development in a predetermined manner, in a fixed manner, where he states that development starts from a trust versus mistrust stage, then moves on to the next stage, and then goes through the entire 8 stages. Every individual will go through all of these 8 stages in the fixed manner. There is no highs and lows. There is nobody who would skip one or move to the other one. That is basically epigenetic principle, and that our development throughout these stages would be continuously influenced by our environment, by the society around us, by how much our parents are supporting us, how many resources are available to us, whether we have a supportive peer group or not, and so on. Is this better now, Bhavi? Yeah, I know it is a little short, but does it make sense? Epigenetic means age-related development. Epigenetic is the term used by Erikson. You might not want to get confused with the term. It's just the term that he gave. It is basically stage development. How, in the first slide, we were talking about discontinuous development, stage view of development. It is the same as that we move through one stage to the other. Age, yes, definitely is a component, but it is not just age. It is more of our biological needs as well. Biological needs and the societal demands. Make sense? Okay. Okay, moving forward, a very important concept in Erikson's theory is that of crisis. Okay. How Erikson viewed crisis is he believed that every human goes through a series of psychosocial conflicts. So, once again, Erikson's terminologies that he used might get a little confusing. Focus more on the underneath meaning. Crisis is not the same that we look at it as, right? It is more of a conflict. So, he believed that epigenetics still remains the same, that everybody would go through a predetermined sequence of conflicts. Okay, so they would move from one conflict to the next, which would be presented at a particular stage of life when the environment will demand that. Okay, for example, in our infancy, when we have biological need of, let's say the infant is hungry or they are thirsty. So what would they do? They would cry, ki khana de do ya doodh de do ya whatever. Now, at this time, what is the crisis? What is the conflict? Whether the demands of the society, whether the society would be able to supply to the individual's needs, whether the parents or particularly the mother would be able to cater to the infant's needs, whether she would provide the child with care, with milk, and whatever the infant needs at the time. If the crisis is resolved or the conflict is resolved, the conflict here being trust versus mistrust, whether I can trust the world to provide me or whether I cannot trust the world to provide me. Shall I trust or have a mistrust for the world around me? Next stage, again, autonomy versus shame and doubt. Once again, it is a conflict. Can I do things on my own, or will I be shamed if I do things on my own? It is a conflict whether can I make my own decisions, or will my parents reprimand me for making my own decisions. That is the conflict that, according to Erikson, arises at particular stages, at particular points or stages in our life when the environment demands that of us. So, toilet training is demanded at us at a very certain age. It is not demanded at us just after being born, and it is not demanded of us at 15 years of age. So, like I said, prerequisite sequence still remains the core of everything that we're going to talk about. Then, if this crisis or the critical period of development that we are in, if it is successfully resolved, then we experience growth, psychological growth, as well as we develop a virtue that we have the entire table of, right? If it is not resolved, then we will, of course, face difficulties in later stages of development, and our development would be hindered. So, at every stage, when that crisis is resolved, we develop a new perspective, we develop new behaviors, we experience a shift in our psychic energy. We move from one aspect to the next. Another thing becomes important in the next stage of life as compared to the previous one. Clear, everybody? Okay. I would need a few responses. Okay. Yeah. Okay, perfect. I'm moving ahead. I'm assuming that there are no doubts in this aspect. So next come continuity of crisis as well. Like we were talking about conflict. Conflict will always exist between two different things, right? ऐसे isolation में conflict नहीं होता है. So it would always be between two different poles. Now these two poles, this dialectic is what we call it, are called syntonic and dystonic in Erikson's words. It sounds a little tricky, but it's very, very simple. You can view it as being healthy or unhealthy. Very simple, right? So every conflict, trust versus mistrust, trust is the, of course, I'm assuming we all know, the healthy corner, okay? And mistrust would be the maladaptive or the unhealthy pole of this entire dialectic. So all the crises within Erikson's theories will have a syntonic pole and will have a dystonic pole. And the goal, according to Erikson, is never, never, never to get rid of the dystonic pole. It is not that we should not have mistrust in our life. Okay? Imagine a person who can trust anything that is being presented to them. We would not call that being healthy. We would call that as being gullible. We would call that person as being naive or not knowing what is right for them, not knowing when to stand up for them. So the goal is never to get rid of the dystonic pole. It is just to have a predominant syntonic pole and a little bit of, or a good healthy ratio is how he put it, a healthy ratio of dystonicity as well. So syntonicity versus dystonicity, never, we should not get rid of the shame and doubt completely of ourselves. We should not get rid of the inferiority completely from ourselves. It is about having a right ratio where the syntonic pole dominates, but the dystonic pole still remains and guides us in the right direction. Okay. Making sense so far? And when that, syntonic and dystonic pole, when that crisis or that conflict is resolved, the end result is a core strength or a virtue. This virtue, we know: hope, will, purpose, so on, so on. He gave 8 different virtues. So whenever we resolve a crisis, whenever we resolve a conflict, we get a virtue. These virtues are enduring ego strengths. These are the qualities that ego develops. Like we were talking about how, according to Erikson, ego is autonomous. Ego in itself makes its own decision. Ego is growing as we are moving forward. Ego grows by developing these virtues. At every stage, it develops a new quality. It develops something that we know would be needed in subsequent stages of our life. So that is how ego is autonomous. It is not developing new things because it needs to balance its needs, and it is not trying to balance superego and ego. It is developing its own virtues, its own strengths to meet our future developmental challenges. Okay. Now, if you are clear so far, then the stages would be a piece of cake. And I am hoping that you are clear so far. And then we can quickly move through the stages. I hope, can everybody just confirm? Is everybody awake? Any doubts? Any doubts? Am I still moving too fast? Can somebody does anybody want to interrupt or ask something? Okay. Okay. Then let's move to the stages. This is a very quick glance at all the stages that we have. At the very left, we have stages given by Freud, and then eventually, uh, like I said, adolescence pe unka stages end, and then eventually adolescence, young adulthood, and so on is just Erikson's contributions. We have ages. Ages are a little conflicting. There are different conflicting texts. Some stages, some books talk about how adulthood or generativity stage ends at 55 years of age, whereas ego integrity, some books talk about it begins at 65, some books talk about it begins at 55. I've kept both of them. Erikson particularly did not give such strict age brackets. This was a derivation of the later thinkers who critically reviewed his views. He basically just gave the terms that middle adulthood, maturity. These are the terms that he used. He did not give age brackets that this is where it ends and this is where it finishes. Mostly, we would focus upon adulthood ending, middle adulthood ending at 55 to somewhere between 65. It is not very frequently asked, so you do not really need to worry about that aspect. Then we have in the third column psychosocial crisis, that is syntonic and dystonic poles, trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus shame and doubt, and so on. Every time that it is resolved, we have a virtue, and then there are some significant and key themes, significant relations and key themes that are important at each different stage. We will get into each of these as we're going through the stages individually. This is just for you to have a summary at your own disposition. A very important mnemonic that you might find useful, because I've always hated throughout my years of preparing for exams, I've hated the virtue thing, and I've never been able to remember it on my own. So I created this mnemonic, and I hope that you find it useful as well. It's basically, hopefully, will people completely find love, care, and wisdom, where hope, will are, of course, very clearly, directly related. Purpose is people, and competence is completely, and the other 3, 4 are also very directly present in the table. Okay, we would get back to this mnemonic at the end of the PPT, but I would just like to move forward with the first stage for now. Yeah, trust versus mistrust is the first stage. Again, like I said, everything we will talk about the syntonic pole and the dystonic pole and the virtue that we develop at each stage. When we talk about trust versus mistrust, it is from birth to 1 year of age. How many of you have seen a child being, mm, child in this age group around your home? Has anybody come around this age group in their home? Okay, okay. If you have, then I also know that I don't know if you're a light sleeper, but I know that a child this young tends to wake up at random hours during the night, and they would wreak havoc on the entire household, right? So a child this young, if you've not observed this personally, then you might have also come across videos or movies or whatever where these infants are shown, where a mother has to get up in the middle of the night to cater to the child's needs, right? So a child very, very young, if we go back to Freud's principles, this is the oral stage. Oral means everything that we want, we are trying to experience that from our mouth. So we are looking for feeding, we are also looking for hunger, basically water, hunger and everything. Food and comfort in general are the main areas that we want to focus upon, and we want protection. So if a child, when they wreak havoc at our home while sleeping, while everybody else is sleeping, if mother is present consistently and she provides warmth and she provides care to the child every time, what would develop is the syntonic pole, that is the trust. They would be able to eventually have a warmth in themselves as an adult. They would be secure, they would find the world as being reliable and as being a place which they can trust upon. On the other hand, if the mother is present on some occasions and tends to, let's say, scream at the child or just not be present on other occasions, and the care is not adequate, it is contingent upon XYZ factors, then that creates a sense of suspicion. That creates a sense of negative view or mistrust towards the world, that I cannot trust the world. The world is a shady place, it is a bad place. It creates an anxiety in the infant that world is not trustable in general. So if we resolve this stage properly, what develops is virtue of hope. What the infant understands is that whatever wishes or whatever needs I have, they will be catered to, they will be looked after. I might have some occasional frustrations, but they will be resolved eventually, and they will have optimism towards the world. They will have a confidence that I have people who I can trust upon, and faith in the future in general, right? Once again, the key being that healthy development requires an optimal balance between trust and mistrust. We cannot have a person who completely loses the mistrust wala aspect, which is why occasional frustrations are also needed. Because complete trust is unrealistic and it would not be adaptive for healthy development. So, a balance between the syntonic and the dystonic pole leads to the core virtue of hope. Stage one, clear everybody? I think because we've dealt, is it only mother or any set of parent? Okay, in Erikson and any psychodynamic theories, the caregiver primarily was thought to be a mother, but eventually after psychodynamics, developmental psychology in general states that it can be a caregiver in general. But yeah, Freud and Erikson emphasized upon it being the mother. Anybody else? Any other question? Okay. Like I was saying, if we were clear with the syntonicity and the dystonicity, then the subsequent stages would be very easy, and it's more of a rote memory kind of a thing eventually. when it comes to virtues. But I'm hoping that there are no conceptual doubts over here. Okay, moving ahead then. The second stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt, where we talk about children between the ages of 1 to 3 years. So at this time, the child is developing motor and muscular abilities. They are learning how to walk. They are learning how to go around their perceived world on their own without needing anybody's help. So what are they seeking? They're seeking independence. They're seeking, how can I control my own world? How can I, if I need something, I do not have to cry every time. I can just go and reach out for it. What they're trying to basically learn is muscular control, what to hold on to and what to let go. And a very core concept when it comes to holding on and letting go in psychoanalysis, in psychodynamics, is toilet training. So at this time, the society or the parents, both the parents, are trying to emphasize to the child that you have to hold on to this intense urge of passing or defecating, and the child is unable to understand that, right? So this is where they're trying to understand the balance between self control and the societal regulation. They're trying to understand what is the healthy balance for me, and they're trying to learn how much of autonomy can I practice, and what would be something that I would be shamed for, or that would not end well for me, go well for me eventually. So a child this young, what would they try to do? I don't know if you've experienced it. I remember whenever I would, be going to my play school, I would pack my bag, and then my mom would at times unpack the whole thing and do it once again. And then what do you think that would lead to? What do you think? Anybody? Very simple. For a child that young, shame and doubt, exactly, doubt on yourself, frustration, exactly. The child would be irritated, they would be shamed, and they would be doubtful whether I did that correctly, did I not do that rightly, why did she have to redo that, right? This is something that we might have experienced a lot of times in our life. Or if not the bag example, a lot of children, when they're going for, let's say, a family function or something, they want to dress up in a certain manner, and the parents know that this is not the ideal, I would say, according to the societal standards, and they would want to change the child's get up. That is what we talk about, autonomy versus shame and doubt. That is how much the child realizes whether they have the opportunity to make their choices or not, or whether they cannot really control everything in their aspect, or they would be frequently criticized, or they would be ridiculed for making certain decisions. This is syntonicity versus dystonicity, autonomy versus shame and doubt. If I am making the choice to wear a very weird frock, or if I'm making the choice to pack my own bag, then am I being allowed to do that? That leads to autonomy. That makes me feel that I have the independence to make my own choice. I am confident in myself and in my abilities. On the other hand, if I'm criticized about it, if I'm punished for that, or if I am made to be embarrassed about that by my parents, who constantly scold me for certain actions, then that would lead to a sense of inadequacy, a sense of self-consciousness, shame and doubt, basically, in general. And once again, the virtue that we develop once this stage is developed, resolved, is will, where we have a free choice, and we know that whatever I want to do, I can. But there's also a sense of self restraint in a knowing manner, in a manner that, yes, this is something that I should definitely not do. So, a balance of both syntonicity and dystonicity. Again, overly strict parents lead to shame and doubt. Excessively permissive parents would create a situation where the child, as an adult, would become very, very impulsive. They would not know what is right and what is wrong, and they would not be able to differentiate between the two. Okay, this stage clear, everybody? Shall we move forward? I know it's a little long, so I don't want to make it beyond your level of concentrations. I'll just move ahead. I'm not getting a lot of responses. Next stage. Okay, perfect. Okay. Initiative versus guilt. At this stage, we are developing locomotor abilities. We are learning how to dress, and basically the fine motor abilities are developing. We are learning language and imagination. This is the stage when the child starts asking why question. Everything that we do, it is followed by why. Why this? Why that? Can I be the teacher? Will you be my student? Why did you do this? Why did you do that? Right? So everything about this stage is exploration, is imagination, is your own fantasy. Okay, so initiate activities is the key. What we're trying to do is we're trying to understand the world around us, about how much of initiative can I take, how much of exploration can I do, and the curiosity is the key factor over here. We're trying to establish leadership for ourselves. We're trying to take charge of all the actions that we want to do. This is the initiative or the syntonic pole. The dystonic pole, on the other hand, talks about if whenever I am asking these why questions, whenever I want to engage in fantasy plays, and whenever I am trying to express my desires and ideas, I am being shunned, and I am being punished for that, and I am being scolded that why do you ask so many questions, why are you doing that, why are you doing that. Agar if you have a younger sibling in this age group, or anybody that you know, the exploration is a very inherent biological need that they have, and if we tend to dismiss that, or be very, let's say, critical of that, then there develops a sense of guilt that I am doing something wrong. And then there develops a self blame, the inhibition that I should not do it, I should not ask whys, and I should not engage in anything. I should rather be just passive. I should just stop it over here and let whatever is happening happen. If successfully resolved, this stage leads to the core strength of purpose. Purpose gives me the courage to imagine. It gives me a sense to uh, have and achieve meaningful goals despite there being obstacles and possible failures. I know that I can have certain goals. I know that I have the courage to pursue my ambition, and I know that my ambition would have certain obstacles. It might not always be accepted, again the ratio between syntonicity and dystonicity, but I have the courage to pursue them, and I have a sense of purpose about whether I want to explore further or not, and I have a goal directedness. This is the age where, according to Freud, superego tends to develop fully. This is 3 to 5 years of age, right? 5 years is when Freud says that superego develops. So at this stage, if we go back to Freud's theory, this is also the age bracket where phallic stage falls, right? So Oedipal guilt is also one of the main sources of guilt. However, not the only source. Erikson also emphasized that societal and developmental terms is the aspect of how much can I explore is also controlled by the society around me and by my parents and everybody who is whether engaging or not engaging in my activities that I want to play. Right. Makes sense so far? Shall I move forward once again? इसके सारे notes share कर दो. Yes, you can definitely have the access. I think Team Cyclopedia or Vidhi would guide you further about that. Okay. Industry versus inferiority. This is the stage between 6 to 11 years of age where we enter formal education, where skill building is the key area. 6 to 11 years of age, if you remember, is when we start comparing ourselves with our classmates. I don't know if you recall, but this is also the age where you start to learn that she is the class topper. I am average, or I'm not that good at this thing, right? Or since most of us are in psychology because we sucked at maths, I'm assuming that this is also the age where you tend to realize that I am not good at this subject, or I am not good at sports, or I'm really bad at this thing. So everything is in comparison to my peers. Everything is in comparison to the world around me. Okay, so what we're trying to understand is the as the child is learning to read, solve problems, play sports, complete school projects, and all of this, we're trying the child is trying to build different skills and develop a sense of mastery, the sense of mastery being the most important aspect. So they are trying to develop a sense of competence, that I can do this, this is my skill set, I can do well in this area. On the other hand, if they feel after repeatedly comparing themselves with the peers that I am not good at it, or I am repeatedly failing at it, or I am receiving criticism, or being excluded from the friend groups. Imagine being a 6 to 11 year old, roughly fifth, sixth, seventh class, and the child has to sit alone. They're not being allowed to play with the other children. They would, of course, feel a sense of inferiority. They would have that very strong self doubt in themselves. Making sense so far? And when this stage is resolved, we develop what is called competence. Okay, competence, that I can do this, I have the skill, I have the efficiency, and this is my achievement. This is what I have learned, this is how I am better than others, this is these are the areas that I shine in, these are the areas that I'm not so good in, and so on. Again, parallels with Freud's latency stage, emphasized by social achievement and competence rather than psychosexual development. When we look back at Freud's theories, this is when he said that sublimation takes over and its needs are sort of suppressed and everything is about society. This is the same age as that. Okay, moving ahead, everybody. Next, we come into role identity versus role confusion. Very, very important stage. Erickson wrote an entire book about this stage and identity crisis. Okay, frequently asked in exams. Mostly the virtue is something that we frequently see being asked, and the age group is also important. Generally, they put 12 to 18 years or 12 to 20 years. Both are acceptable, whichever you see can be the answer. Okay. Now coming to, okay, what is, okay, sorry. Yeah. Coming to what we want to do in this age or achieve in this age. Adolescence, we are looking for a coherent sense of self. If you remember, this is where we start asking these questions, right? When do you think we started asking, who am I? Who do I want to become? This is also when the society also starts asking you these questions. What are you going to do with your life? Which fields do you want to pursue? Is this, do you, or in our context, do you want to be an engineer, doctor, and the popular choices that we have? This is the central task to integrate our past experiences, our present abilities, and the future aspirations. All three we try to combine and try to develop a sense of stable identity, that this is who I am. These were my past experiences so far in life. These are my abilities, and this is who I want to be. Okay, I think I do not really need to explain the syntonic and dystonic aspects in these. Syntonic is that I have developed a sense of identity, that yes, this is me. These are my core skills. This is my self concept. I am committed to these areas. These are my values. And role confusion, on the other hand, is that I do not have that sense of identity. I am confused. I am uncertain. And I am not able to make the decision about who I am. Now, at this point, I want to ask you all, how do you understand the virtue of this stage? Fidelity, what do you think this means? According to Erickson, it meant something a little different from how we understand it in the present time. But what do you think fidelity meant according to Erickson? Does anybody know? Is it loyalty? Okay. Somebody being own self. Yeah, close enough. Yes, it is loyalty. Okay. But loyalty to what is also another question. Being oneself, once again, oneself, fidelity to oneself. Wow, I'm happy that you all know this. It's really good to know. A lot of times when we being loyal to a positive self concept, not exactly positive, but what we're being loyal to actually is, yeah, as somebody put it, being constant. It's basically being loyal to our chosen set of values. It's being loyal to what we see ourselves as. Fidelity, when we talk about it in the present times, we see it as being this person was, uh, if we talk about it mostly in terms of relationships, that this person is not very loyal to anybody, or they cheat or whatever. But Erickson viewed it as being loyal to your own self, your own authentic self. These are my values. Even though other people might not agree with these values, I am loyal to these values. This is my sense of self. This is the authenticity or the authentic self that he wanted to talk about. And this is where he believed that we develop our own notion of how we view the world. So far, before all of these stages, everything was provided to us by either our parents or our environment or our teachers or whoever. But this is the stage where we start to experience the world on our own, and we start to develop our own sense of self, our own sense of that this is who I am and this is how I want to move ahead. And I am loyal to this aspect of myself. Okay. Then he also gave the concept of psychosocial moratorium and negative identity. So moratorium, you might have also heard about this concept in another theory. Where do you remember it from? Can you tell me the theorist's name? Moratorium is a very famous concept. Another theory, or a very famous psychologist, also talked about moratorium, but not in the same way as Erickson did. Do you remember where we talk about moratorium? Somebody? You can also unmute, you don't just have to type. Does anybody know? James, yeah. Full name, you don't remember, Umesh? James is right. Marcia, exactly. Marcia. Marcia's theory of identity talks about moratorium. That is something that we can get into some other day. But yeah, Marcia is the correct answer. I'm good. I'm glad to know that you all know that. Okay, so psychosocial moratorium, according to Erickson, talks about how society gives adolescents some time to explore. Adolescents are not always, told that you have to make the decision right now, right here, and otherwise it would be too late. I mean, sometimes we are, but mostly, according to Erickson, this is the time where we are given space to experiment. We are given space to sort of experiment with our roles and our beliefs and lifestyles in general before making any long term commitments. So we can go around and think about these are my likes and these are my dislikes and move ahead accordingly. Then he also gave a very interesting concept in this age group. Like I said, he published an entire book for just this age group. So this is a very, very well established and very well researched part of Erickson's theory. So negative identity, if you let's say if a child or an adolescent feels that they're not good at anything, what do you think would they then prefer? Would they just want to be a nobody? Or is do you remember that line that there is no such thing as negative publicity? Do you think that applies to an adolescent as well? I've made it very easy now. Okay, I think because it is a new concept, I'll just answer. Negative identity basically talks about how, according to Erikson, we would rather have undesirable or oppositional roles when positive identity cannot be achieved. So I would rather identify as being a gang leader because it at least makes me noticeable. I at least then have an identity. If not a gang leader, I would rather just be a part of a peer group that I know is not a healthy peer group, but I would still want to be included in something. I do not want to be left out, and I do not want to be away from everybody else. So negative identity is not role confusion. It is not a lack of identity. It is not identifying with aspects that are considered negative by the society, with aspects that are unhealthy for me, which with aspects that are threatening or just maladaptive in the long term. Okay, now that this, I think this summarizes this stage. Does anybody have any doubts? Very, very quickly, guys. Resources, I think we can talk about later on. Okay, no doubts. Right. Intimacy versus isolation. This is the stage that most of us are in presently, 18 to 35 years of age, young adulthood. Uh, इस टाइम पे क्या होते हैं सबके goals? I think this is very, very easy to understand. What do you think your 2, 3 goals in life are right now? Can you tell me? Come on, you're all in this stage. What do you want to, what are we seeking? Success, money, exactly. And everybody else, Umesh is seeking success and money. Is there anybody who wants a little bit of love as well? Peace. Okay. Stability, job. That's right. Career establishment to find a soulmate. Finally, somebody relationship. Okay. I thought this chat box did not agree with Erickson. Relationship. Exactly. Finish studies, job, and relationship. So, according to Erickson, what this age group looks for is a sense of being able to identify with somebody else. He emphasized that this stage requires that identity versus role confusion should be resolved at least partially. Basically, this is stage 6. So, what Erickson emphasized was that stage 5 should at least be resolved partially for us to enter this stage, because this stage requires that we fuse our identity with another person. This is what intimacy versus isolation meant, according to Erickson, that we fuse our identity with another person. And if we are fusing our identity, we should have some sense of identity. So if our stage 5 is not resolved, then we cannot enter stage 6, according to Erickson. We should have at least some sense of who we are for us to make sense of intimacy versus isolation. So this is something that we also practice clinically as well, right? You might have heard that you need to know what you want before you go and search for a partner. This is how it comes in Erickson's theory as well. So the syntonic pole is that we develop a sense of closeness and commitment, but the dystonic pole is that we become very, very self-absorbed, we isolate ourselves, we are lonely, and we tend to avoid any sense of commitment at any point. Okay, so fear of emotional closeness is what we find in the dystonic pole. The virtue, of course, is love, and it is a sense of mutual devotion. Mutual devotion, that is, I can put your needs before mine on a lot of occasions. It is a devotion is basically how you can understand it in terms of worshipping, right? I'm devoting myself to somebody. I am committing myself. But it also, the mutuality is the key aspect. It is not that only I am doing it. I also know that the other person would also do it. So being able to transcend the differences and still maintaining that bond that we have with each other. This stage, Carol Gilligan is a very, very famous critique of this stage. We have also heard Carol Gilligan's name in other theories. Do you know? She is a very famous critique of most of the psychological theories, but her name is more frequently associated with another theorist. Do you know where we heard the name Carol Gilligan? Do you remember? Moral theories, exactly. Kohlberg's moral theory. Perfect, very good. So, Carol Gilligan, mostly famous for her critique of Kohlberg's moral developmental theory, but also in general, she criticized all the psychological theories as being coming from a very, very male-directed, point of view. So, in her book, In a Different Voice, she stated that women's identity development is very different. It is more relational. So when Erikson said that you need to have your own identity for you to fuse with somebody else, Carol Gilligan said that women in general develop their identity while relating to somebody else, while being let's say in love with somebody else, and that is what helps them develop their own sense of identity. So a very famous critique, whenever a feminist voice is being talked about in psychology, Gilligan always comes forth. I hope you all remember that, and with that, we shall move to the next stage. Can we go? Explain again. Okay, which concept do you want to critique? Okay. Uh, Gilligan, what she talked about was that, okay, so Erikson said that, like I mentioned over here, let me just take a second. Like I mentioned, that we need to fuse our identity with another person. Okay? And he said that we can only fuse our identity with other person if we have our own sense, if we have our own sense of self, if we know who we are. We should have some identity for us to be able to fuse it with another person. Gilligan, on the other hand, said that women's identity does not develop in isolation. She said that this is a very let's say male point of view, but females, according to Gilligan, develop their identity while being in a relationship, while relating to others, while being friends with others, while being in love with others, while playing certain roles in people's lives, right? So according to her, she rejected this idea that intimacy alone cannot exist without my sense of self. She said that intimacy would actually contribute to the identity formation rather than simply following it. Does that make sense now? Is it better? Okay. If we fused our identity with someone without finding own identity. No, what she said that is that we can find our identity while existing with somebody else. That both the things can coexist. It's not that I have to have my identity and only then can I love somebody. She states that I can love somebody and develop my identity while being intimate with them. Make sense? Okay. I am assuming that this is clear. Please give a yes or no. Okay, if we do not develop our identity, then what happens? That we will eventually develop role confusion, and if we do not know what we like or do not like, according to Erikson, आगे वाली stages नहीं अच्छे से follow होंगी. Like we said, uh, if we do not develop our sense of identity, then we do not know what we value and do not value. Okay, moving ahead, next stage. Generativity versus stagnation. Second last stage, according to Erikson. Uh, Generativity versus stagnation, middle adulthood. This is the age जिसमें mostly our parents are currently, right? How do you think they are, what do you think their goals are in their life right now? What do they want from us, from the world in general? What do you see your parents complaining about, or what do you see them putting their efforts into? Where do you think their energies lie at this stage? Get good job. For parents, okay, for you, they want you to get a good job. Our well-being, yeah, okay. stability. Agreed. Anybody else? Financial security for family, making lasting changes in the generation. Very good. Yeah, absolutely. This is what most people want in their life. At this stage, Erickson believed teach their own experience. Perfect. That's really well put. So, according to Erickson, he believed that is stage tak. Mostly people have developed their own sense of self. They have found somebody that they, want to spend their entire life with, or how he put the virtue of love. And this is the stage when they've also, when they're thinking that how can I contribute to the next generation? The next generation is the keyword. Okay, so what they're trying to do is that they want to leave a legacy behind. Okay, and for the legacy, what they want to do is nurture and guide and support future generations. This can be through their work, this can be through their family, this can be through creativity, and this can be through community involvement. Mostly when people think about it, people think that this stage is about, when we think about next generation, we only think about the children. But according to Erickson, it is not just children. He believed that we can, the person can mentor somebody else, they can teach the society in general, they can leave their art behind. What they're trying to do is the legacy aspect of it, that they want to give back to the society, they want to have a legacy for themselves. It is not just through me contributing to my next generation, immediate biological next generation. It is the society in general that we want to contribute to. So this could be a leadership, this could be altruism, basically having NGOs and doing good for the society in general, having civic engagements. A lot of people at this stage also start to join different clubs, different political identities, and whatnot. So basically, anything about my work, about my skills that I want to pass to the next generation. If I am able to do that, if I am able to guide and support the next generation, I have the syntonic tendency. If, on the other hand, at this stage, the person is mostly self absorbed, they are preoccupied with their personal needs, they do not care about anybody else, they only want their own growth and contribution, sorry, just their own growth, but there is no concern for others. Basically what Erickson described as being pseudo intimacy, that I would show that yeah, I am doing good, I am doing good, but it is not actually caring for somebody else, it is just for myself. Then I would become self indulgent and I would be stagnant in my life. The virtue that we develop in this stage is care, meaning that we have a nurturing and protecting welfare for people, for institutions in general, and having leaving behind certain values, leaving behind our own voice, responsibility for the society in general. This is how this stage gets resolved. Any questions so far? Then we move on to the last stage. Okay, everybody, everything clear? Dystonic. Okay. Dystonic is basically in this stage, what we are trying to do, we are trying to give back to the society. But let's say there is a person, you might have noticed uh, some uncle or auntie in your society who is just concerned about themselves, who just wants to, or anybody in workplaces as well, in movies or wherever you might have noticed that they are preoccupied with their own agendas. I want to grow forward, I want to go ahead at anybody else's expense as well, that is fine. So what am I? I am self-indulgent, I am self-absorbed, selfish is the easiest way I can put it, that the person would become selfish. And how Erickson saw as being selfish is that they are stagnant, that they cannot grow any forward and any further, and that they do not want to give back to the society in general. So pseudo intimacy, the word that he used is that I am only concerned about myself. This person has not achieved the ability to care and love for somebody else. So the previous stage, right? Intimacy versus isolation stage. Pseudo intimacy is that Erikson assumed at this stage we have learned the capacity to be intimate or be in love with somebody. But if the person did not resolve that, then they cannot resolve this stage as well. And I can only be intimate with my own self, which is basically I can only care about my own needs and wants. I do not care about anybody else. Make sense? Better? Okay. Moving ahead, then, last stage, according to Erikson, is ego integrity versus despair. 55 years plus, or like I said in some books, 65 is also mentioned. It is the age when we reflect on our entire life and we evaluate whether it has been meaningful or worthwhile. So, the syntonic pole is that I have lived the only possible life. Only possible life meaning that this is the best possible life that I could have had. Any other choices, if I had made, I would not have been as satisfied as I am right now. Okay, so I am fully, wholly, completely fulfilled with my life. I am very happy with my life. On the other hand, if a person in this age group is looking back and they feel a sense of regret that I wish I would have made that choice instead of this one. I wish I had chosen a different partner or a different job or whatever instead of this one. Then they are dissatisfied. Then according to Erikson, if we are dissatisfied, is also when we develop a sense of fear of death. We fear that because I have so many regrets, why would I want for this life to end? I would only want it to end when I am satisfied that yes, I could have, I did everything that I could possibly have done, right? The concept of you only live once and all of that. But if I feel that I could have done so much more, then I would want to live further, and I would have that fear of death. I would want to correct that. Okay, so according to Erikson, if the dystonic pole in this one is despair or regret, or basically the fear of death being the core one, if successfully resolved, we develop wisdom, where we have an informed and detached concern with life itself. What that means is that we know I have lived the best life, and I know that this is when I would uh, like to detach myself from the reality that I would die. I would basically not having a fear of death, is how I can put it in the most simple language. That I have detached myself with the concern of how will I live, how will I live, how can I live longer. All of this. This is where the acceptance comes in. This is where the maturity comes in. Like I said, the central question was my life meaningful? And wisdom allows people to face death without the overwhelming fear or regret. Okay, with this, we come to an end to the Erikson stages. Does anybody have any doubts in this one? Those who have fear of death are on the. Yes, according to Erikson, a person who has accepted, who has resolved this stage completely, will accept death as being a real uh, a real experience. They know that death is inevitable, and they know that death everybody dies. They accept that. It is not that I would be very happy that yeah, I'm going to die. It's just that I'm not fearful of, oh shit, I'm going to die. That is the difference between it, the fear versus the acceptance that yet yes, it is the reality and I cannot surpass it. Make sense? Okay. A little bonus for you all is Joan Erikson's last stage, stage 9. Joan Erikson was actually Erikson's wife, Erik Erikson's wife. This stage was not given by Erikson, it was added by his wife after his death. Okay, she drew on the concept of gerotranscendence given by Lars Torstam. This gerotranscendence word was not given by Joan Erikson, given by a different philosopher, but she used it and expanded the theory. What she meant by this stage was that once you have accepted death and you have resolved this entire ego integrity versus despair wala stage, then you reach a point in your life where you move towards a broader, more transcendent understanding of life, which is basically that you get into spirituality, that you tend to connect with the cosmic part of self, creating a distance between the materialistic and the rational world and the self-focused perspective. You are basically understanding that life is more than what is present in my physical form right now. Like I said, you can think of it as being, this is more of an Eastern philosophy perspective, if you want to, look at it like that, distance from the Western worldview. But yeah, basically connecting with the cosmos in general and connecting with my soul, with the universe in general. Very, very relevant in end of life counseling and palliative care. Not very frequently asked in exams. It is just something that I would rather have you know than not know. But yeah, I think I would brush through this topic very, very quickly. Does anybody have any doubts about this? Those who are spiritual from very young age without being greedy or feeling alone, is any uh, okay, there in this theory there is not much about that, but I think for this you would want to move towards the Eastern theories. Western theories tend to believe that spirituality comes in the end. They do not believe that it grows with us. But Buddhism and some Indian perspective, yoga perspectives, very beautiful comments on spirituality from a very young age. Okay, please, everybody, I think this is the last slide, and this would be just a revision of everything that we've done. Does anybody have any doubts? I hope this was not boring or too lecture-like for you all. But in Eastern theories, thank you. We can't be spiritual when we tend to be in old age. We can be, definitely. Spirituality depends on how you want to look at it. I think that is a very different lecture. I don't want to get into it right now. But yeah, particularly right now, does anybody have any doubts related to Erickson? Because we're already running very late, and then we can jump right into MCQs. Quickly, guys. Yes, no. Shall I move forward? This happens in late adulthood. This, I'm assuming you're talking about Joan Erickson. She assumed that this happens after the ego integrity versus despair stage is resolved, once you have accepted life. So not exactly, I mean, yeah, you can call it late adulthood. It's basically geriatric age. Okay, moving to the MCQs then. This is a very quick revision of what we don't want to confuse. Shame in guilt. Yeah, let me just. Shame in stage 2 and guilt in stage 3. Shame always focuses more on external sources, okay? That I am inadequate and I I made a mistake, maybe. Okay? Guilt is more about I did something wrong. This was inherently wrong. Guilt is always internal, shame is always external. Shame is more like लोग क्या कहेंगे अगर मैं ये करूंगी या करूंगा तो मुझे डांट पड़ेगी. Guilt is I did something wrong and ये काम ही मैंने गलत कर दिया है. This is internalized moral standards. This is public criticism. Okay, like I talked about Erickson's psychosocial moratorium and Marcia's moratorium status, a little different. Erickson talks about a socially sanctioned period, about exploring our possibilities of what we want to commit to, and Marcia talked about involving active exploration without any commitment. A little different concept, but I think Marcia's would require us to get into details later on. Negative identity versus identity diffusion. Negative identity, we deliberately adopt a socially disapproved identity. Whereas identity diffusion, we do not have any identity whatsoever. We cannot commit ourselves to any direction. Different concepts once again. And then fidelity, as we already talked about, it is not simply loyalty. It is ability to sustain our commitments, knowing that the other people, that everybody around me or in any other person in general, might contradict this, might conflict with me, and I know that my ideas are not perfect. This is how fidelity was seen by Erikson. Okay, this is just a summary that I think we do not have much time for, so I will directly get into the MCQs right now. First question for you all. Which of the following correctly pairs Ericksonian stage and its associated virtues? A, B, C, D, guys, quickly. Okay, I'll read with you all. Which of the following correctly pairs B, B, B? Okay, rest. B, perfect. Wow, that was quick. That was good. B, I'm really glad. All right. Moving to the next question. Which virtue is associated with successful resolution of stage 7? A, fidelity, B, hope, C, care, and D, wisdom. First, you need to remember which one is stage 7. Okay, that was quick. That was a very quick response. Wow. Right. Stage 7 is generativity versus stagnation, right? So, generativity versus stagnation, the correct response, the virtue is care. Perfect. Very good. Very good. Okay. Then, next question. The theory, Erickson's theory, differs from Freud's primarily in its emphasis on A, the unconscious and libidinal drives, B, sociocultural context. Okay, this was a very easy question apparently. And autonomous ego. Strict. ठीक है. Okay, perfect. That's right, everybody. Main difference between them is the socio-cultural context and the autonomous ego. Always remember the two concepts. Okay, moving ahead. This is a match the following question. Okay, I'll give you some time. First, hope, and then industry versus inferiority, will, initiative versus guilt, purpose, trust versus mistrust, and competence, autonomy versus shame and doubt. Which is correctly, what is the correct order? Hmm. Okay, think a little. Somebody has also put A, right. A, exactly. The A is the right answer for this one. Okay, how I try to approach these are focus on what you already know, ठीक है? इसमें से दो में वन और सी है जो कि मेनली सबको कंफ्यूजन हो रहा है they were confused about one A and D. So we know that hope is already linked with trust versus mistrust. The next aspect, how I tend to pick one or two that you are sure about and then move ahead, okay? So the next aspect that I want to know is whether 2 is linked with D or 2 is linked with B. Then will. Okay. Will in D is linked with initiative versus guilt, but we know that that is not true. Initiative versus guilt, very different, where what we resolved and we get out of there. Over here, we are getting D, that is autonomy versus shame and doubt. If you remember the mnemonic, we'll get into it later on. It would become a little easier for you all to solve this one. Okay, moving ahead then. Let me just mark the correct one for you all. A is the correct one, okay? Next. Which Ericksonian stage is most directly associated with vocational choice? This is an easy one. I'm guessing you'll be able to get it. Industry versus inferiority, trust versus mistrust, identity versus, okay. Everybody think about vocational choice. You are choosing what you want to do in your career, in your life. Think about that. In your life, yeah. Vocational choice is what you want to do in your life. Career wise, exactly. This is identity versus role confusion. Okay, I hope you were able to get it. I think, yeah, mostly people were able to get it. For those who entered A, industry versus inferiority, yes, you are developing skills in those area, in that age group, in that stage, but you are not choosing the vocation that you want to pursue. That is a little different. Okay. Next, we have which of the following is the correct sequence of Erikson stages? Then A is trust, initiative, autonomy. Okay, very quick. Right. Yeah. Anybody else? Industry, then trust, autonomy, initiative, industry, autonomy, trust, and yeah, I think mostly you have answered. B, exactly. Very good. This is B. We know that trust versus mistrust is always first, and uske baad A, autonomy is the second stage. Autonomy versus shame and doubt. Okay, next question. An older adult who looks back on life with satisfaction is likely experiencing. Focus on the key points over here. An older adult looking back with satisfaction. What are they experiencing? Integrity, stagnation, isolation, or shame? Yeah, yes. All of you have answered correctly. This is integrity. This is the last stage, ego, integrity versus despair. Very good. Okay, next. A self-absorbed middle-aged adult with little concern for future generation is likely experiencing isolation, stagnation, despair, or inferiority. Once again, age group should be your focused. Self-absorbed middle-aged adult. Yeah, that's right. Exactly. This is stagnation. Next question. Mm, which of the following terms did Erikson use to describe developmental turning points at each psychosocial stage where opposing tendencies must be balanced for healthy personality growth? Mhm. Which of the following terms did Erikson use? Again, focus. Developmental turning points where opposing tendencies must be balanced. Identity status, psychosocial moratorium, syntonics crisis, or life space. Okay, anybody else? A little less responses for this one. Is it a little tricky? Okay, the correct answer is syntonic crisis. What what we need to focus upon is developmental turning points. Again, that is basically we're moving from one stage to the next stage. Okay, opposing tendencies is syntonic versus dystonic, and we need to have it balanced. What balanced is the crisis. We need to have a balanced resolution of our syntonic versus dystonic crisis. Make sense? Is it now understandable for you all? Okay, I'll move forward. This is the last question. Assertion is that Erikson shouldn't it just be crisis. What is B then? Okay, I'll get back to that. Sure, I'll just attend that then. Psychosocial moratorium. Psychosocial moratorium is not crisis. Psychosocial moratorium is where we get time to explore our options. Okay, that where adolescents in general, according to Erikson, society gives them time to explore their options. They do not have to give the decisions right then and there. They get the opportunity to take it slow and discuss it and explore their own world around them. Okay, so this is a little different from what we're talking about. This is not about having the key over here is yeah, the key over here is opposing tendencies. opposing tendencies जहाँ पे भी आ रहा है, we can always go to syntonic. It should, you might be right, shouldn't it be just crisis? Just crisis also works, but right now we have to choose from these given options, right? Most of the times, especially in UGC net, they do not give you the exact phrases that you want. So this is why syntonic versus dystonic crisis, if it had mentioned, that would also be acceptable. If just crisis, then also that is acceptable. But the core is opposing tendencies and balance, that and the developmental turning point. So turning point is always when we have a crisis, and balance is always when we have a crisis. Does that answer your question? Is it better? I'll just... Okay. Yeah. Last question. Assertion is that Erikson considered identity formation to be the major developmental task of adolescence. Reason is that Erikson believed that personality development ends with adolescence. Options, both A and B are assertion and reason is true, but R explains the A. Then both assertion and reason are true, but reason does not explain A. A assertion is true and reason is false. That is assertion is false, and R reason is also false. What is the correct one? Let us read it once again, okay? Erikson considered identity formation to be a major developmental task of adolescence. Okay? Major developmental task. Then he believed that personality development ends with adolescence. What did we talk about? When do you think Erikson's stages, when do they end? They do not end at adolescence, right? They go until old age, till 65 years of age. So clearly reason is false. This is not true. Erikson did not believe that personality development ends is the key word. It does not end, according to Erikson, at adolescence. It goes on throughout our lifespan. But yes, Erikson did consider identity formation to be a major developmental task of adolescence. Okay. Uh, Remember, the name of that stage itself is identity versus role confusion. So of course, adolescence, the key aspect is identity formation. So identity formation in adolescence is a major developmental task, but reason is wrong. Hence the answer is A is true and R is false. Everybody who answered correctly, that is, you did really good. This was a little tricky. Okay, I think I'll stop presenting now. That was it from my end, and we can take any doubts if you have. Now, let me just... Yeah, we were talking about, you're saying what are the resources, preparation in order to get into IBHAS MA Clinical Psychology. IBHAS MA Clinical Psychology, they have not really confirmed whether they would be going forward with MA Clinical Psychology right now. When I was there, it was in talks and they were considering about how they want to proceed. But yeah, for their entrance, DU makes IBHAS's entrance exam. So what they mostly focus upon is general psychology. They mostly focus upon social psychology. They also tend to put a lot of sample question papers just 1 month before their own exam. They tend to put a lot of sample papers on the website, so you can keep on checking for that. But that is of course when they give that notice that they are taking students in for this session. Like I said, when I was there, they were talking about it, but it's still in the process. Mostly that you want to focus upon resources, जो सब लोग books. Okay, I'll just go through that, Vijeta. Yeah, mostly for lifespan development or personality, you can go through Schulz and Schulz. Lifespan development, I also really like Laura Berg's book. She is really good with that. And yes, book recommendations. I think I'll make a list of book recommendations and I'll share with, I have a whole list right now saying all of them might be a little long process. So I can share them with Vidhi and Manvi, and then they can forward it with you guys. And I've started masters this year. Hmm. Okay, you would be eligible for RCI. The entrances are tough, definitely, yes. But the entrance is more than being tough. It is more about the competitiveness, right? Like for Ibhas's exam, like I said, it is a very basic. Agar if you go through the last 2 years papers, the questions were very very simple. They were as simple as somebody appearing for a graduation level entrance, but it is more about the competitiveness that you have to have the highest marks. Anybody who is scoring 82 might get in or might not get in. That is not the concern. It is about whether you are scoring higher than everybody else. And I think we're also running out of time. I'll just take one or two more of these and then I'll pass on to Vidhi. Those who are I feel that my knowledge and experiences with non-RCI masters are equally important. Okay, non-RCI masters is this is something that I think I would let Vidhi answer, because this is a little new for me for non-RCI masters, how that would be different. But yeah, mostly you have started this your masters this year. Whether you would be qualifying for the clinical RCI certification is a little different. Then who's
Hi, Manshi.
yeah,
Yeah, I think a lot of questions are on RCI eligibility and all those things, and that is not really the
exactly.
focus of the session. So we are just
Yeah.
asking if in case anybody has any questions related to today's topic, Ericsson. And of course, I think we can just conclude the session right now. And if in case you have any questions related to this eligibility thing and the RCI thing, you can reach out to us separately. You can send it on the WhatsApp. Right now, if any question related to Ericsson, any doubt, then you can ask. Otherwise, I think we can end the session. So I see there are no questions.
Yes. So, since we've already completed the topic, I'll just take a moment to thank Himanshi for explaining it in the most simplified way possible, and also a rating from all of you, that from 1 to 10, how confident do you feel in this topic right now? And if you can also give a pre-post rating, as in how confident you were with Ericsson previously and how confident do you feel with Ericsson right now. So rating from 1 to 10, where 1 represents not confident at all and 10 represents the highest level of confidence. So if you can tell that in numbers, that will give us also some idea as to what your experience with the class was like, and overall, how did you feel? And Vijeta, yes, with feedback for you. And Anisha, 10, very glad to see that. Aishwarya and Krishna, yes. So whenever students rated somewhere around 9 to 10, that gives us an idea that they enjoyed the class and they, got some value out of it. So thank you, Zonuma, for the 10. Yes. Yes. So, as you know that we will be beginning with our MClinSci preparation course from 1st July onwards. Himanshi will be one of the resource persons who will be taking lifespan psychology and personality psychology, and we've together prepared a very comprehensive blueprint. And all those of you who've been asking how to prepare and what topics need to be done and how much depth do I need to study which topic, we will be covering everything in the classes itself in the similar manner, with mnemonics, examples, MCQ practice, preparation guidance, conceptual clarity, just like we had it today. So our early bird is almost about to close, and classes itself are beginning in about 15, 16 days. So if anybody is interested, you can reach out to us and we'll help you with the registration details. And we look forward to seeing you in more of our classes and more of our courses. So, yes. All right. Do not worry about the calendar and the timings, because we have planned everything at the back end, and according to our course, we are completing the syllabus by December itself. It is for the 2027 entrances, 2027 intake, right? And because the net exam is on 29th June, that is why we have to plan it accordingly, right? So our course will help you prepare for the net December exam and MClinSci 2027 exams, which will happen anytime after February, March onwards 2027. So we have about 8 to 10 months in hand. So do not worry about the timing of the course. We plan everything at the back end and then only present it for the students. Yes. All right, so that is it from my side. And if you have any questions, you can always put it on the chat box, or you can always put it in the WhatsApp group as well. And if anybody wants to register for the course, they can just DM me or Manvi. And I am also putting down my number in the chat box in case you want to reach out for any more details. So, yes, thank you so much for joining. And it was a great time interacting with you all, like every time. And hope to see you in more of our sessions. So, all right, take care. Have a good night.